Thank you for joining us. I'm Bill Jasper, Senior Editor for the New American Magazine, and again we are pleased to have with us today our foreign correspondent in Europe and around the world, Alex Newman. And we're going to be talking today about the deep state and the environmental sustainability scam. And Alex has done quite a bit on that. He's going to be going to some more of the UN conferences on the environment, and of course he was at the major one in Paris in 2012 for the global warming conference. Alex, you've been doing a lot on this, traveling to a lot of the UN conferences. You did the article on the UN environmental schemes, advanced world government in our deep state in action issue. What's the key thing happening right now with that?
Well, you've been to probably a lot more of these than I have, Bill. And you went to the original Sustainable Development Conference down in Rio. You and I had the opportunity to go to the UN Climate Conference in Copenhagen. That was a blast. But the short of it is that the United Nations and the deep state, the globalists behind the United Nations, are using this environmental ruse as a pretext to build one of the pillars of global governance. And they're actually pretty transparent about it at this point. And they're pretty transparent about the real agenda. You know, when I was in Rio 20 years after you at the UN Sustainable Development Conference, 20 years after the original Earth Summit, they had these posters around, and you had like this sick planet Earth, and the doctor shows up and says, I know your problem. You have humans, right? So humans are treated as a disease. Humans are treated as the cause of the planet's problems, which is, you know, completely flies in the face of the traditional Western view of people and humanity and the relationship of man to the planet, right?
As stewards of
That's right.
the environment.
Genesis says, you know, be fruitful and multiply and subdue the earth. The UN says definitely don't be fruitful. Don't even think about multiplying because babies are bad for global warming.
Abort your children.
Absolutely, and you know, just don't have any children. We need to reduce the population. They're obsessed with this, and they're very open about it. And subduing the earth is like, oh my goodness, you might hurt a lizard. How dare you subdue the earth? So the relationship of man to Earth is being completely flipped upside down, and what they're doing is establishing controls over every sphere of human activity. You know, just to understand the enormity of this, realize that, and I know you do, Bill, they're calling the gas that we exhale, carbon dioxide, literally the gas of life. Every plant on this planet requires carbon dioxide. In fact, there's a shortage of it. That's why farmers pump CO2 into their greenhouse. The UN is saying that this is a pollution and that it needs to be taxed and regulated by the United Nations, that we need a global CO2 budget, and that after we burn through it, that's it, no more. We're going to divide it up between, you know, EU gets this much, Americans get this much, you know, North Americans get this much. This is absolutely crazy, and it means the end of freedom if we let it go through.
Right, because it means basically no energy, because any energy that you produce except for nuclear energy is going to add CO2 to it. So, but they even found an excuse to get rid of nuclear power as well,
right,
which we see happening with Merkel in Germany, and as we've already experienced here in the United States, trying to get rid of all the nuclear power. But every source of energy comes under their thumb and has to be put down. And energy, of course, means prosperity and production and elevation of human condition on this earth.
That's right. And, you know, when you combine this global warming hoax the UN is pushing, which, you know, most Americans now realize it's a hoax. Even the establishment's polls show that most Americans don't believe the man-made global warming theory, which I think is great. Trump ran on a platform calling it a hoax, which was good, and said he was going to withdraw us from the Paris Agreement. Then there's also this UN Agenda 2030, the UN Agenda for Sustainable Development, or the Sustainable Development Goals. They've got like 50 terms for it. You know, people need to read through that and realize that behind the window dressing about, oh, we're going to end hunger or we're going to end poverty, what you have is a global roadmap for totalitarianism. And I mean, the communist Chinese government was openly boasting, hey, we played a crucial role in bringing this to you. The mass-murdering, genocidal dictator of Zimbabwe, the Marxist Robert Mugabe, said, this is great, it's going to lead us into a brave new world. You know, people need to wake up. Freedom, as we have known it, will cease to exist if the UN gets its way on these environmental schemes. It's not about the environment, right? You want to see a terrible environment, go to a country where these principles have been enacted. Go to Cuba, go to the former Soviet Union, go to North Korea. They're all environmental wastelands, and they're telling us that if we implement this at the global level, somehow we're going to save Mother Earth. It's ludicrous. We're going to eliminate freedom, and eliminate nations, but we're certainly not going to save Mother Earth, as they call it in this document. So people need to get a copy of this issue, read it, and wake up and get involved in the fight.
Real briefly, there are some encouraging things happening. I'll list a few of the things that we've covered that the Trump administration has reversed in this area, particularly in the area of the United Nations international globalism.
Yeah, it's truly been amazing. You know, he has withdrawn or announced withdrawal from all sorts of UN programs. The UN Global Compact on Migration that wanted to globalize immigration policy. He's announced that we're going to be withdrawing from the Paris Agreement. For whatever reason, he accepted the ludicrous provision in there that it takes 4 years to do it, even though the Senate never ratified it. Announced that we're withdrawing from UNESCO at the end of 2018. We withdrew and defunded the UNRWA, the Relief and Works Agency. We announced that the International Criminal Court, if they try to come after an American, they're going to be prosecuted, they're going to have their assets frozen, and we don't recognize their supposed authority. So very, very good things are happening from the Trump administration in terms of throwing a monkey wrench in the globalist machine, but there are some troubling things, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to talk about those later. We are not out of the woods yet. People need to stay involved in this fight if we want to keep our freedom.
Right, so those are all the encouraging things. We're very concerned about what's happening internationally, particularly on the trade issues, and we'll get into that in future ones, but the new replacement for NAFTA has some very dangerous things that we'll have to discuss. Yeah. Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you for joining us. I'm Bill Jasper with the New American Magazine.